welcome to the first session of our Young Alumni Speaker Series. I'm Andrew Granholm. I'll be the moderator for this evening. I'm the Chicago Chapter's Gold Chair, and I wanted to thank you all for coming together with us this evening. We know that the past few months have been uncharted, really turbulent territory for all of us, and we're navigating definitely some uncertain times right now. So we could appreciate you spending your evening with us tonight, and we really hope this event and the Vanderbilt family could provide you all with a sense of comfort and community during this time. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of background on the overview of the Young Alumni Series, the speaker series really originated from the reality that some young alumni graduate not really having an intimate familiarity with what they want to do post-graduation. So while most alumni secure jobs or pursue further education immediately after graduation, many alumni experience a career path that is different than the one that either A, they originally intended to take, or they come out really uncertain about the career path that they'd like to pursue. Really in an effort to promote young alumni engagement and career development, this speaker series will feature alumni from different industries and provide attendees the opportunity really to hear about different career paths, the current jobs, different industries, and experiences navigating the personal career journey. So we hope the personal and career journeys of these alumni will showcase the different diverse career paths and help inspire some of the folks on the call's own journey. So without further ado, that's the end of my spiel. We have an amazing guest for you guys tonight, and we are pleased to have Morgan Franklin as our featured speaker. So to give you guys a little background into Morgan, so Morgan's originally from Boca Raton, Florida. And is a 2021 MBA student at Chicago Booth School of Business. This summer, she's worked with ZX Ventures, the innovation arm of Anheuser-Busch, developing celebrity equity investment partnership strategies. And following graduation, Morgan has accepted an offer to join Anheuser-Busch InBev as a global marketing manager in New York City. Prior to Booth, she received her undergraduate degree in history and English from Vanderbilt in 2014. Morgan then moved to Atlanta, Georgia to work for the advertising sales arm of Turner Sports with a greater Turner broadcasting conglomerate, selling everything from NBA on TNT to March Madness to E-League. Morgan found a love for developing revenue-driving sports culture strategies. So upon arriving at Booth, Morgan has put her love of people and writing to use with an excellent blog, MBA, the blog, where she gives guidance on the MBA process, tells her classmates stories, and may even give you a book review or two. So Morgan, really wanted to thank you for being here with us tonight. And before we turn it over to Morgan, I want to mention that folks on the call will have the opportunity for Q&A at the end of the event. So please, during the chat, if you guys have any questions that come to mind, please use that Q&A function to submit your questions. I will be monitoring that throughout the event. And if there is a question that comes up that you guys are particularly interested that we cover, then please do upvote it. You guys do have the functionality to just click the little, I think it's a thumbs up button, and we'll be able to see those questions that generate the most interest. But without further ado, and an end to my long spiel here, I'm going to pass it over to Morgan.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you guys so much for having me. I guess, I'm considered a young alumni, but I don't know, I feel like kind of old, maybe not. I'm really happy to be here and share my story. I feel like, as Andrew said, there's so many of us that, around 30, under 30, we're trying to figure out, what do we really want to do? What are we here to do? And I think it's incredibly inspiring to kind of see where our stories take us and understand that it is not just one path or one size fits all path. So I'll start from my beginnings. I'm from South Florida originally. Vanderbilt was one of the few schools that no one from my high school had went to. and I called it a diamond in the rough. And I thought I wanted to, or a hidden gem, I should say. But when I went to Vandy, I thought I was going to be an orthodontist for my whole life. I wanted to be a dentist. I had an amazing orthodontist growing up, and I was kind of obsessed with his practice. And I was like, I'll do my pre-dental work, and then I'll like be an English and history major on the side, and I'll do what I want to do. So I didn't particularly love science class, but everyone just kept saying you got to make it through. So I spent my 4 years at Vandy involved in an obnoxious amount of things. I really did whatever, you know, I was excited about, whatever I was passionate about, whether that was running the Black Student Alliance, running Mosaic, being a tour guide, being on student government. And ultimately, my love for recruiting brought me to Vanderbilt football. So, for any of you that were around during Coach Franklin's reign, we went from a 2-10 losing team to a 9-4 winning team. And I'd like to think that in some ways I was involved in that change. When he came to campus, I was like, hey, I know you need a tour guide, and like, please let me be that for you, and I'll help you build your program. And he said, okay, fine. I don't know what's going on here, and you can do it. And so, now today, when you go, well, if it was a regular school year, we'll say last year, if you had gone to a game last year and you see all the tour guides, they have all this cool swag and stuff. We didn't have all that, 8 years ago, but it's become now a huge part of our recruiting activities and really telling the Vanderbilt story. But working with Coach Franklin, I fell in love with the business of sports. How do we take a team that sucks, make it great internally? How do we get our community excited about it? How do we convince people to stop partying at the frats and come to the game on time? How do we get people to wear school colors? Like, how do you build a culture around this brand? How do you build the football brand? And I became kind of obsessed with it. And it was really cool just being on the field every Saturday. Like, I worked on Saturdays. That was my job. And really just trying to convince people that Vanderbilt was the place to be despite our losing records. So leaving Vandy, Coach Mason came on board, and he's like, well, Morgan, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'm supposed to go to dental school, but I really don't want to go to a post-bac program. I have my DAT scores, but nothing in my heart is saying go back to school again. Like, so I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, well, you want to stay and work for me? And I was like, well, you don't know my mom, and I can't not get paid for the next 6 months. So that's not going to work for me. And so I ended up leaving. I did Teach for America for a short stint. It did not work out. I was like, okay, I don't want to get stuck here. So let me go ahead and go back home and figure out, what do I really want to do? And so I'm sitting with my mom, and she's like, well, what do you think you want to do? And I'm like, well, I know how to sell a dream. I know how to sell stuff. I love sports. I feel like I could like sell something in sports. And she's like, okay, let's work our network and see what we got. So I ended up getting an interview with Turner Sports in Atlanta, and moving there for that job, being a sales assistant, which was an incredibly humbling experience. I was used to literally running like our organizations at Vanderbilt, having, an executive board and funds. Like, I was used to telling people what to do. And then I went to like being like an assistant. And that was really tough for me, because it's like, you onboard really quick, you're smart. And it's like, okay, what more can I do? And so I ended up being with Turner Sports for 4 years, became a sales planner, which was not that much different, but I got to work with some of the coolest properties in sports. I mean, basically everything but football. So NBA and TNT, PGA, MLB, Bleacher Report, esports, as they were first launching here in the US. But I was in a really unique position because I wasn't in New York in the sales hub. I was in Atlanta in the business hub. And so I sat next to all the strategy and marketing people. And so I was like, well, I need a seat at the table. I can't sit in this cube all day. So I brought together a group of, multicultural young people in cubes. And we just started building out strategies that we thought the company should work towards, whether that was everything from trying to do live events that would merge the sports culture worlds together, or bringing technologies that would allow people to talk to their favorite celebrities, or sportscasters, just trying to help them understand, higher management understand what they could do, um, in spaces that we weren't currently playing in. But when I joined Turner, they had just had a huge layoff. About, they called it Turner 2020. They laid off over 1,000 people, and they were gearing up for an acquisition with AT&T. And so everybody was scared. And we didn't know what was going to happen. So I'm coming on 4 years at Turner. I'm starting to look at other jobs. And I had bought books to go back to school years ago to go get my MBA. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go back to school. But I never opened them. So I went, visited my friends. I had a friend in dental school and optometry school in Boston. They were in class all day. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Harvard and like see if I really want to go back to school, or I'm going to spend the day on campus. And when I stepped into class, I knew that it was like time for me to go back. And that was it. I was like, okay, it's February. When do I have to apply by? I didn't really understand how it worked. Most of my friends were in medical schools or law schools, or went straight into consulting or the workforce. I didn't really have that many friends in business school, which was very surprising and still is surprising, now. And so I decided I was going to go back. I was in the midst of applying for jobs at the time. So I had gone through a process with Google, made it to the final round. I thought I had it. I told my boss, I'm like, I think I'm getting this job. And if I get it, I'm leaving. And then I didn't get it. And I was like, all right, either I have to commit to going to school, or I'm going to keep job searching. And so I decided that I was going to commit to going back to school, stop the job search, and just shoot for the stars and see where I landed in terms of education. And so I ended up going through the process, was accepted to Booth, University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and it's been incredibly awesome. I have met some of the most amazing people in the world, and came in with the thought of, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to keep exercising my entrepreneurial skill sets. I'm not going to get a job. I don't care about where I go to work after school, and I had kind of mocked up this urban branded hard seltzer as I was watching the rise of hard seltzer here in Chicago, questioning why it wasn't rising in Atlanta with my friends. And a friend from ABI said, hey, you should really look at this group called ZX Ventures. They do really awesome innovation, stuff like this. Definitely apply. I ended up applying, got the summer internship, and then ultimately ended up getting a job offer to join their global marketing team. So it's been an interesting ride, one that I could not have written nor expected, but really fits into my view of, the things that bring me joy. I've said I want to be around things that bring people together. And that's always been sports, food, and bev. For those of you that know me, I cook a lot. I'm always hosting, but I didn't know where I could find a home, right? So in sports, I was in sales, and now I'm going into the beer world, and that's just about bringing people together, celebrating life, and breaking bread and drinking together, which is kind of beautiful in its own way. So that's a quick history of my background.
Well, Morgan, I don't even know where to start. Like, it's like these are, and I would beg to say, like, these are the journeys that a lot of people have, like, after graduation and trying to find themselves.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that you were talking about that kind of like got me curious too, because I've been in a position where, oh, I know this job is not meant for me. Like, where is that threshold? There, I think there's a fear and uncertainty of like, well, what is there for me after that? And I know
Yeah.
really you're just really a natural born leader. You have this idea, you go for it. But was there any point in that process that you felt kind of like that barrier, like hit that wall, so to say, as like that fear of like trying something new? And then
Yeah.
with that, like, how did you like overcome that, so to say?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, looking at my time at Turner, I just knew that it wasn't a place that I could grow. Um, and it's grow in a variety of ways. It's grow intellectually, it's being challenged, it's being able to exercise. Not everybody wants to be innovative, not everybody wants to do things differently, right? I'm always smarter, not harder. How do we be more efficient? How do we talk to the customer better? Um, and I realized that as much as I was being seen and heard, nothing was moving. And taking the learnings that I had there, it's really helped guide me in where I'm going next, because there's certain things that I'm looking for now. I'm looking for a company, whether it's a large company like AB InBev or a startup, or just a team at school. Are these people that I can challenge? Are these, are these people that are going to challenge me? And understanding that if I choose to do something, I have to be wholly there, right? I can't say, okay, I think I'm going to go back to school and not be 100% committed to that. Or, okay, I think I'm going to compete in this entrepreneurial challenge at school and not be 100% committed to it. I think the big part of it is saying, like, I am 100% committed and I'm going to use all my resources around me to make this real. And to me, some people will say, like, keep things to yourself. I'm all about tell people what you're excited about, tell people what you want to do. Because when you do, then people can know how to help you. Closed mouths don't get fed, right? So you want to make sure that you are constantly informing people of what it is that you're passionate about, what it is that you're trying to do, or what you're doing, so that they can know how to support you in that journey. It's hard to do it alone.
And along that same strand, like I'm seeing a couple of questions here of like in the context of what you're talking about, how do people determine really, oh, is grad school the next thing? Like, is
Yeah.
that like that exploratory phase, like you have it really manifest either through mentors, different experiences that you see in your job. And sometimes it's not as salient that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of folks are just thinking grad school will get them there. So I'm like focusing more so on like your booth experience and really what really inspired you to go to business school.
Yeah.
To address this question really is like, oh, how should I know if going to grad school is right for me, and is it right for me right now?
Right. So what I ask myself is, can I do the things that I dream of doing on my own? Or do I want someone to help me get there? Um, when people would be like, well, you want to be an entrepreneur, why do you have to go to business school? Just do what you want to do. Okay, well, that's fine. I don't go to the gym without a trainer or a teacher. I don't go to class to learn without a trainer or a teacher. If I'm looking for how to make something new, I go online and I find a recipe to help me. Like, it's, to me, I'm getting the training that I need for my own educational purposes. I'm building a network that will support me literally for the rest of my life. And I knew that I could not get to phase two. We don't know how many phases, this adult life will be, but what I'm calling phase two of this adult life without this stepping stone, right? And I think that a lot of people, when you're young, when you're fresh out from Bandy, right? You're 21, 22, 23, and you're looking at people that are in business school, you're like, oh my God, they're 27, 28. What are they doing? Like, why are they going back to school so late? This is the normal age to go back to school, between 26 and 29. You've had some years of work experience. You know that you either want to pivot into something new, or that you want to be able to excel within your company quickly. Right. So it's like, if you want to make a change and you know that you can't make it on your own in a time period that makes sense, go back to school. You're only going to gain from it, right? You're not going to lose anything by going back to school. You'll lose a couple of years of salary, but when your salary is quadrupling, that's a completely, it's a different conversation. Um, so I think, like, when you know that you can't get to next on your own where you are, consider going back to school and make sure that you go to a place that's going to, surround you with love and support and help you get to next. Right? That's why you're here, is to get to next.
Love it. The one thing, and I think we have a question here that's a little more particular about like I guess like taking this question to a broader perspective, is can you talk about really what you've liked about your experience at Booth thus far and what you haven't
Yeah.
liked? And then maybe taking that a step further, how has that really differed from your Vandy experience? Like, have you
Yeah.
had those same opportunities to really exhibit that leadership? Which I already know the answer is yes, but but like just doing like a comparative, like how do you like
Yeah.
Booth and Vandy?
Absolutely. So I think at Vandy, my mom, I don't know if she's on here, um, she would be like, stop planning events and doing whatever initiatives you're doing and go sit and study for bio, right? And that was like the argument. You want to run everything, but like you need to go sit down and study for class. But to me, the skills, it's funny because looking back, we've talked about this a lot, my mom and I, everything that I am was because I did the things that I knew I wanted to do while at Bandy. You know, I put myself in positions to really truly lead as a very young person. And to have, you know, faculty and administration looking to me for guidance, you know, that's very similar here at Booth, you know. So, and you know this because we've talked about it, but I held a lot of positions at Vanderbilt, and coming in a Booth, I made a very conscious decision to not hold any leadership positions. um I chose to lead with my voice. I knew that I could do more if I was able to build a platform where, you know, I could tell my classmates stories and I could talk about the things that I care about. And that was very different than what I did at Vandy. Um, it was almost like an evolution. So now it's like I take my skills that I learned at Vandy, that I exercised someone at Turner, and I put them in a way that works for me. So with Booth, this experience, you know, because I had no intentions of actually recruiting for a job, which sounds so foolish, but that's was my mentality. You know, like I would sit in our winter garden and just get to know people. So instead of me running to recruiting events and going to corporate conversations and all that kind of stuff, I would just be hanging out in the winter garden, showing people my ideas and asking them for feedback, and very much doing the things that I cared about. Because to me, I'm looking at my peers as, who can I one day hire? If I stand something up, who do I want to bring with me? Who cares about what? Who has certain skill sets? And so I'm trying to understand and build my network so that one day I can bring those people with me. Right. So, what I love about Booth is, you know, you're in this incredibly global community of super smart people. I mean, Vandy, we had a lot of smart people. This is that. Um, but with people truly from around the world, and you are expected to really build these very strong relationships. So for me, it's been educationally fulfilling. It's hard. I don't do math, so this is a, you know, this is hard for me. But in classes where I thrive, whether it's strategy, marketing, entrepreneurial stuff, you know, that's when my friends can lean on me, and I can lean on them for things like econ. Um, Being in Chicago has been awesome. I'd never been in the Midwest. I'd never been in Chicago before I came to interview. And it has been one of the most wonderful places to live and, you know, be around my community. And now it's just open doors. It has opened so many doors. I just joined, I was tapped on by a professor that I TA for to join this Black entrepreneurial initiative that is being led by MIT and is hopefully going to be something really big. Like we have some serious people behind it. And I get to be a part of this group, um, and really support something that I care about. So it's been awesome. Things that are not so great, I mean, I've had a pretty damn good experience. Um, it's been awesome. The only thing that sucks really is what COVID has done, which is really marring, you know, my business school, the dreams I had of traveling the world and, you know, doing that with my friends. I was supposed to be in Singapore from January to March. Don't get to do that now. Um, but I think that what's been tough is, you know, we're in a really trying environment right now, and we're having to navigate fully virtually. So although like we all live next to each other, we're still on Slack, like we have a school Slack, and we're having to navigate, okay, how do we talk about Black Lives Matter? How do we talk about the election? How do we talk about dealing with COVID and whether it is morally okay and ethically okay to be socializing? What do we do when there's an outbreak, which we just had? So realizing that these are the future leaders of the world, and we have to make sure that we act accordingly and that we are telling our friends this is how you should act in this situation, is important because they are going to be, you know, the next CEOs, COOs, CFOs, founders, and we want them to be awesome because they represent us collectively. So that's been tough, but I think it's been tough for everybody.
I think I wanted to take a few points that you said there and really segue into our next question. It's like, So with you and talking about like even in your Bandy experience and in your booth experience, getting to know people, just put yourself out there and network. Like I could like I already know Morgan, like you're great. Like when I talk to you, I'm like, okay, let me tell you XYZ things, right? So like I think since we're in such an unusual circumstance with COVID and things are virtual,
Yeah.
we have a lot of new grads out there that are relocating to new cities for job and schools. So do you have any advice really, not only for like how to establish really a life post grad and meeting new people, building those
Yeah.
communities and networks when inherently it's very difficult to do so. So
Yeah.
I'd like to get your take really on like how do you navigate like those change in locations, meeting
Yeah.
people in this COVID world?
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'll be going through it again in 6 months, seven
Months, yeah.
months. But, you know, for me, I can take this back to just how I had to deal with my internship this summer, right? So with my internship, it was supposed to be I go build a brand. If they had said, hey, go build a wine, a canned wine in South Africa, I would have gone to South Africa and built a wine. And instead, I was working on a solo project by myself from my house in Chicago. And I had to figure out how to really get to know people and build somewhat of a reputation for myself in a company where I know nobody, right? So that they could want to give me a job. And I think a big part of it is like these Zoom conversations. It is a beauty and a nightmare. It's a beauty because everyone is willing to pick up the phone, right? You could get to know anybody, anybody. I just emailed the CEO of Converse. I was like, hey, we need to talk. He's a booth alum. Got me on his calendar. All right. Everyone will say yes to talking to you. The question is, how do you really take your 15 minutes, 30 minutes, um, and really get to know somebody quickly, right? So, how do you get across the points you want to get across and make sure that you go to people with intent for that conversation? Um, because, like, the nightmare of this situation is our calendars are now crazy booked, right? There's no more little quick 5 minute conversation, coffee chat. A coffee chat is 15 to 30 minutes now. You block it off on your calendar, right? And you have to be intentional about building those relationships. So, like, as I'm watching first years come to me because they want to get to know me and meet other people, you know, don't be shy about why you're reaching out. Don't apologize. Say, hey, like, I'm super excited to meet you. You know, this is what's really interesting. Can you talk to me about this? You know, or can I talk to you about this specific item? Give people a reason and intentionality for your call so that you can actually find your similarities or things that you care about and build that relationship. It's possible, it's happening, right? And the fact of the matter is, it is not a uh, new reality. Like, this is our reality now, right? So I don't think we're ever going back to what we had before. So we really got to learn how to do this virtually and to build community virtually and be okay with that, embrace it.
And then with like, I guess with folks and being open to meeting new people, especially as we get into winter here, what in your experience like really captures your attention? Like, oh, I really want to get to know this person a bit more. Like, could you
In
give us
terms
an
of people
example?
reaching out to me or me reaching out to people.
It could be either. So
I
both.
mean, if I am requesting time on your calendar to chat, right? I'm going to tell you exactly why I'm reaching out. Um, or for example, I had a first year this week or last, I came to you over the weeks last week. It's only Tuesday. Um, and I had shared in our school Slack an article I'd written about like trusting the curve, right? Because like grades don't matter at our business school. So like trust that like you'll be fine with your grades. And I shared it in the first year's channel, and I had a girl reach out to me. She was very nervous. She's like, look, I just want to introduce myself. And I'm reaching out because like your article really impacted me because I'm struggling. Like I'm really struggling. And you know, you never know what conversation you may have that just may make somebody's day better, make them a part of your network for life, and just like be vulnerable. Everybody's struggling. Nobody's doing fantastic right now, right? So like if there's things like be vulnerable, be open, and to me, like when someone's like, this is really how I feel about this. And can you give me your opinion on it or your advice on this? Or can I talk to you about a specific subject? That it just helps to ground the conversation in something, and make it more than just, okay, I'm checking off that I spoke to you.
So really having the intentionality when actually meeting folks. So like for folks that
Yeah.
are moving to a new city and just like even getting to know people on a social level, like are you suggesting that like you have hey, I just moved to the city. Like I want to make, a new friend in the city, or you've been around a while.
Absolutely.
Could
Or
you
like,
show?
hey, I see that like you go to this place and you love it. Like, what are things that I should be doing in the city, given the current state of it, right? Because everywhere is different. Like here in Chicago, stuff is not happening. You know this. Like, it is not on and popping here. But in Atlanta, it's on and popping. You
Oh,
know,
cool. I
so
saw that.
you know, so but just be open with people and give them a reason to actually interact with you and not waste their time. Never want to waste people's time.
Retweet. And then, so we had a question come through that do you have any advice really going through the interview process for graduate school? So in particular.
Yes. Well, you can always go to my blog, MBA the blog. The name will be changing when I graduate, but MBA the blog. Um, and I have a whole guide for how to look at your interview. What I will say is your job, there's a couple like key things. Your job is to make the most out of your first 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. When they say, oh, well, tell me about yourself. You want to give them as beautiful of a package as possible on who you are, what you've done, why you're there, and why you want to be in business school now. If you can answer, like I call it triangulation. Why is this important to you? Why is it important to your classmates and the community that you're going to be joining? And why is it important to the world that you join, right? At this specific point in time. You can answer those questions, you'll be great. And I think a lot of people don't realize that that interviewing skill, you could use that for any interview. I mean, when I went through my process with AB and Bev, I went right back to my MBA application stuff and went through all my mock questions, and I had them all written up already. And you can use the guide that I've written up for anything, any type of interview, um, because it really will give you foundation for how to attack personal questions, how to tell your story in a way that is outward facing, not about me. It's about what does me being here mean for y'all. Um, and a lot of people they forget that. It's me, 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 me. It's not about me. It's about us. So thank you for sharing. But yeah, you want to be forward facing because you are going back to school or you're getting that job, not just for a higher income. You're doing that because you want to have a greater impact, right? And you can have a greater impact by being in said new position. So you want to make it very clear that it's not just about you, it's about the community, it's also about the world and what you're going to do to impact that. And be yourself. Like nobody likes a buttoned up, like, high key, stressful conversation. Like be yourself, be vulnerable, be open, know what stories you want to tell, right? Like if you know the points that you want to get across, if you know what you stand for, then you will be able to doctor your responses to fit that storyline, right? And you'll see also in that sheet what I call like your 5 to thrive. What are the 5 things that you want to get across by the end of that conversation? So if you know what your 5 are, great. Then you'll be able to pick and choose the stories that you share.
I think because I definitely looked at the blog before, and what I love about it is you also showcase some of your booth colleagues too and really highlight their stories. And
Yes.
going into the interview process, and I know imposter syndrome has really been thrown around a lot, and being true to your authentic self and conveying that. Is there any advice you would give, like young alumni especially,
Yeah.
When even meeting people, and then like also in the context of interviewing, like any advice for it, as weird as it sounds, like being your authentic self, being
Yeah.
truly who you are, and really getting that across, even if it's through like a virtual like platform, like in a
Yeah.
chat, email, like any advice
Look,
there, Morgan?
you have to be your biggest fan. If you don't believe in yourself, then who will? Right? Like you've got to believe that you are awesome. No one can tell me that I'm not awesome. Even if I have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm going to act like I'm awesome. Um, and what's interesting is that when you say that, about imposter syndrome. So I'll give a brief anecdote about my experience this summer. So I was working for this innovation arm. I had an HR VP from the global marketing team, which is a corporate on the corporate side of the business, in my conversation, in my final presentation. She asked for a she asked me to come have a one-on-one, and she was like, "Hey, I want you to come present your final presentation and basically interview with the CMO of ABI Global and all of his direct reports." I'm like, okay, great. Great opportunity. I'll do it. What am I going to say? No. And, I had gone through my questions. I had all my stuff, my interview stuff ready. Tell me about a time and answer in a star format and all that kind of nice stuff. And I was hit with questions that I called my mom after. I was like, Ma, I did the best that I could, but I didn't fail it. But I don't know how much I rocked it because I was being very much myself. Um, Very true to what I care about. I was not hiding what I hope to be doing, and what I stand for. And what was interesting was that they asked me questions where they wanted me to basically say why I was awesome without just saying I was awesome. And it was very bizarre. So, for example, they asked me, tell me about it. Three, tell me three things. No, tell me three extraordinary things that you have accomplished, and do it quickly so we can continue the conversation. Mind you, I'd already done my kind of highlights. I did this and this, I did that. And I said, tell me three extraordinary things that you've accomplished. And I had to go back to my Bandy days to now to get that done. Right. But in that, I knew what I stood for. I knew what I cared about. So I was able to pull from those experiences. But I had to believe that I had done awesome things in order to answer that question confidently. That's really tough. And then I had another VP ask me, tell me what makes you extraordinary as a person, your character, right? These are not questions that I was prepared for, but I knew who I was. I know who I am, right? You've got to believe that you're here to do awesome things, whether that's in your personal life, your professional life, like it does in your social life. You got to believe that you're here to leave some type of legacy, some type of mark. And you got to believe that the things that you've done set you up for where you're going. So for me, it was like I had to think on my feet quickly. What is it that's awesome about me? What are my qualities that are great? And you have to be okay with celebrating those things. You've got to celebrate them first. Like I said, closed mouths don't get fed. If I don't tell them that I'm awesome at this, how would they ever know? So you've got to believe that you're awesome. And I find myself a lot here. I mean, I'm at top 5 business school. And I'm sitting here and I have to hype up my girlfriend specifically all the time, all the time. So it's like, it's clearly an issue across the board. And if I'm having to sit here and say, you are awesome and you are smart and you kick ass, if you have to tell yourself those things, that's fine, but tell them to yourself. Don't ever question what you're here to do because it shows.
It goes back to the classic phrase, which I think you mentioned. It's like if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to believe in you?
Well,
Um, and I think there was a question that came across in the chat that I think you answered, but just to reiterate it, is do you ever experience imposter syndrome in your professional life? If so, like, how do you deal with it? Are there any self-doubts that you ever feel like about yourself? Like, should I be in this room? And if
yeah,
that does occur, like, what advice would you give to someone who does experience that imposter syndrome?
yeah. So this is what I'll tell you, and this is how I was raised. I was raised to treat everybody the same. Treat everyone with respect. Do not be intimidated by anyone. Everyone is just a person, right? It doesn't matter if they are an NFL player. It doesn't matter if they are the president of the United States. It does not matter if they are the janitor. It doesn't matter if they're the CEO or cube worker person, right? Everybody is important. Everybody deserves respect. You should never be intimidated by somebody. And that's how I live my life, right? So it doesn't matter who I'm talking to. They're just a person. They're just a human, and that's their job. View them that way. Like, and they'll appreciate you for it, right? Like, a celebrity is just a person whose job happens to be being a celebrity, you know? So if you treat people as if they are just your equal, you will not fall into that, am I supposed to be here? Like, you should never have to ask, should you be in the room? You're in the room. Own it. It's yours, right? And they're in the room with you so that you can be great. So don't ever question, like, am I supposed to be here? You wouldn't be there if you weren't supposed to be there, you know? So that's how I've walked through life since Bandy, during Bandy. Like I said, you can't tell me anything, right? It's, if I'm here for a reason. And you've got to believe that you're there for a reason, not by mistake.
Having that unshakable sense of self, really.
Yeah, why not? People do it all the time. People that have no right thinking they're awesome act like they're awesome. Like, if they can do it and they're not that smart and they don't do great work, imagine how crazy it is that you're doing great work and you're awesome and you're not hyping yourself up.
Because I feel like people struggle a lot of times, including myself. It's like, oh, we are really awesome people, and we do a good job of hyping our friends up, of hyping our colleagues up. But then when it comes to hyping our sense of self up, it's like there's always reservations and doubts, like,
Right.
oh, am I really? You know? So like
Right.
excellent advice, and like you have to like change that perspective, switch it up because
Absolutely.
like you're already there. Like,
Yeah.
and
And
to
it's
your
it's
point.
infectious. It's infectious, right? So like, when you think you're awesome, other people are going to think you're awesome. If you think you're not that great, other people are going to think you're not that great. Don't give them
Mhm.
a reason to think you're not great. Give them every reason to think that you are the shit. Like, you have to.
Truly.
Fake it till you make it. Lots of people do it.
Words to live by. And then we actually like deviating a bit. So we have a question about your blog. Like we've had folks that
Mhm.
actually have looked at your blog,
Mhm.
and they're wondering like what inspired you to start your blog and really invest so much time providing these
No.
resources, helping other people, and then actually like making such a well-structured, beautiful user interface blog. Like with the
Yeah.
boost student, like and balancing all these things, really how, Martin? How did you
Yeah.
do this?
I mean, I think a big part of it is because I'm not bound to any leadership responsibilities. So even though I am very much one of the biggest leaders on campus, I don't have to go to weekly meetings. I don't have to carve out time to like set up events and
Mm,
stuff. And I really appreciate that. But the blog originally was supposed to be a place for me to reflect. I have a very bad memory. Like, I can't tell you what I did this morning. Um, but I wanted to be able to say, I know what I'm here to do. Let me make sure I stick to what I said I was here to do. And if people read it, cool. They don't, that's fine. Can I commit to just doing this for the next 2 years? And like, the way the blog looks today was not how it looked originally. Um, but I realized that people were finding value in it, right? Like, I'm always about, how can I give value? And it's taken a couple different iterations of the types of content. I'm still working on new content. I'm working on a podcast, like, I'm doing different things. Um, but I realized that people realize their connections to others via their stories, and you
mm,
don't know people's stories, right? So like, some of my closest friends, we're just great friends. We never sat down and really heard each other's full stories, and people have these really circuitous paths that you would never guess, and so it's like, through meeting all these amazing people, I'm like, oh my god, like, you have a story that people really need to know, and people need to see different faces. And when people say booth, I mean, I didn't know all the different, you know, kind of faces of the business schools because I didn't really have friends at business school, which I guess makes sense because my age at the time. But people were always like, Boothies are so quanty and they are not social and like they're weird. And I was like, that's kind of not what my experience has been. And because we were constantly trying to attract more diverse candidates as well, I was like, you know what? I need to be highlighting people that are not on this very straight path, that
Mhm.
have very interesting stories and backgrounds, so that other people can understand that it doesn't matter where you come from, where what you've been doing. If you like, I thought I was a non-traditional candidate, because I was not coming from consulting or banking. So to me, I've used it as a place to build community for people to be able to have great conversations. Um, and it has been awesome. It has been more awesome than I ever thought it could be. And I truly hope that I'm going to be able to continue it post grad. Um, and it's just about putting away time because it takes a lot of time to put together content. Like it is a project, but it's very fulfilling, and it's probably been one of my favorite things that I've done at Booth so far.
I think I'd be lying to say that part of that is the goal of this series, really. It's like taking what you were saying. It's like you can't judge like someone by
Book
just
by its
looking at
cover,
them.
not at
Um,
all.
you have to like dig in, have those experiences, and highlight those diverse experiences of different folks.
Absolutely,
So that's
absolutely.
really like, especially that's why I still would like to thank you, Morgan, for like being your first speaker here.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then I think we have time for maybe just one more question. So I'm gonna leave this like really in, not really a curveball, but a very general question here.
Yeah,
But like thinking back to yourself and just graduating from Vandy, like kind of like knowing like, oh, what I'm gonna do this, or I think my life is set in this direction. What advice would you give your recently minted graduate self, and like then knowing now?
that is a really great question because there is no way in this world I would have thought that I would have ended up here, that I would have thought my career would have been in sports and beer. Um, that I couldn't have guessed it. So what I will say is, regardless of whether you're a fresh out or a not so fresh out,
Mhm.
you know, really think about what brings you joy. Think about what value you bring to the table and what you see yourself doing. Um, I think a really interesting question that, when you're going through interview process, they ask like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you see yourself doing in 10 years? I can't tell you what I'm doing tomorrow other than hopefully studying for this midterm. Um, but when I realized that when I answered this question with these different higher ups at ABI, they really loved my response. And I realized this response was very true to myself. I said, you know what? I can't tell you exactly what it is that I'm going to be doing in 5 years or where I see myself in 10 years. What I will say is that I love things that bring people together. So if I'm doing something in one of these industries where I'm getting to talk to consumers and build something great, then I'm going to be happy.
Mm,
So understand like what brings you joy, what space you'd like to be in, whether that's an industry, whether it's a location, doesn't matter. Just understand and really be honest with yourself and what's going to bring you joy. Um, and be focused but flexible in what that looks like because you don't know what your path is going to be. You have no clue. But if you're focused but flexible, then you're going to get to where you're supposed to be.
mm.
So that is my guiding piece of advice, and hopefully what I will stay true to as I enter, this next phase of my journey.
I think that's an excellent advice to just let it simmer in and sift in, y'all. Sift in. But I'd like to thank you again, Morgan, on behalf of
Always.
myself, on behalf of Vandy, really for taking the time in in times of Rona and studying for a midterm, which I think everyone on the line could really relate to, for
Oh
really
yeah,
speaking and taking the time and being with us here today.
absolutely. It is my
Um,
pleasure. Thank you for having me. And guys, if anyone wants to reach out, always happy to talk to Vandy alum. please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or just want to chat.
Yeah, and I think just as a reminder for folks that are still on the line, we have another one of these coming up on, oh my, I think it's November 18th. Let me go ahead and verify real quick. Yep, November 18th with another one of our alum, Rebecca Chong, and
She's
we'll be discussing the same topics here. So thank you guys for joining, and as always, Morgan, it's lovely, and thank you for being the amazing person that you are. But
Thank you
thank
for
you,
having me,
Morgan.
Andrew. Chat soon.
I'll talk to
Bye.
you later. Bye.